Hello from Kowloon Peak, and it's a beautiful day today. Sunny, a little bit misty, but still okay. And guess who I have here? The great David McKirdy, the coolest guy I've known in Hong Kong. A great poet, great editor, and a great car mechanic, by the way, too. I've just seen this incredible car in the peninsula that he was working on and knows everything about. David is well known in Hong Kong, a veteran Hong Kong poet, and today he's going to read some of his poems, and hopefully I'm going to read some of my poems too, and we're going to have a great day today with David from Kowloon Peak. Would you like to start, David?
Just give me a second.
Okay.
Can you pause it for a bit?
Sure.
I want to try and find the poem which... This is windy here. Okay, ready?
Yeah, sure, I am.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, Ahmed. It's a great pleasure. Here we are on Flying Goose Mountain, which is one of the 9 dragons, which is where the Hong Kong name Kowloon comes from. In Cantonese it's Kowloon, which means 9 dragons, and each of the peaks here is supposed to embody the spirit of a dragon. And so this particular one is the tallest one. In English it's called Kowloon Peak, and it's the tallest one of the 9 dragons. And this mountain range is supposed to be where Hong Kong gets its protection and prosperity from. So I'm going to start off with a poem about 9 dragons. I'm going to start off with an introduction by the famous Chinese poet Lu Yu. Where the hills and streams end, there seems no road beyond. Amidst the shady willows and bright flowers, one more village, Yao Yat Chun. Fragrant harbour. From the summit of Flying Goose Mountain, survey the realm of the 9 dragons. Kowloon, a linguistic anomaly transliterated into a word devoid of the meaning and mythology of this ring of 8 mountains, each inhabited by the spirit of a mighty beast, ruled by the Sung Emperor, ensuring peace and prosperity for those living within its gaze. 2 cities, 1 location, 2 linguistic narrative arcs of our history, each name in Cantonese a signpost for what went before, a route guide to the past, a palimpsest of urban overlay and Blade Runner shards, Nike and Reebok's plus-size commercial footprint obscuring Yau Ma Tei, oil and sesame fields, now concrete high-rise, Sam Sui Po, deep water pier, miles from the sea, Hung Hom, red cliff, as flat as a plain. Yao Yat Chun, one more village, a bucolic poetic concept amidst dense cityscape. We live in a magical land, unseen, unheeded, masked by busy blinkered lives. Underfoot the bedrock and foundation of our city remains, ghosts of knife sharpeners, letter writers, rickshaw coolies, sampan girls, the faint footfalls of those gone before. What will we leave as we sink into the past?
Beautiful. Very nice. So how are you going to do this? Read alternately? How about
Sure.
that?
Good idea.
Okay. I'm going to read one of mine too. Down there. We swap places.
Yeah. Wrong way around.
Yeah, it's going on. You don't have to press anything.
Okay, still going, yeah.
And I can edit it later. You can come closer, David, for the voice, so you know the sound.
Yeah.
Okay. David just read a poem about Hong Kong, about the nature, the natural beauty of Hong Kong and the mountains. And I am going to rebuttal now with a poem from Savage Charm, and it's entitled Advertisements. This is a city of advertisements that you aren't supposed to miss. A dollar sign, the latest iPhone, a black muscular tiger in a Calvin Klein. You can't choose your rulers, but you can choose how you dress. This is a city that makes sure that you don't go mad by carrying you forward from ad to ad. Everything offers itself to the onslaught. The wall, the tunnel, the station, the train, the bus. The bodies, the buildings, the brains. No wonder why we make sure to instill in the children the Toys R Us.
Bravo. It's nice the bird in the background. Huh?
Yeah, very nice. We have chosen a great spot here.
Oh, we have.
It's a great spot. Don't worry about the editing. We'll do editing later. We'll just What book is that? How come I don't have a copy of that book?
You will have a copy by the time you leave here.
Great.
This is my later collection. You have a copy of this one, do you?
Which one?
No. Accidental Occidental. That's my first one. And then this one is the second book. Right, this one, a little bit of a background. When I was growing up in Hong Kong, I had a Chinese nanny, and she would babysit me and sometimes take me to the Cantonese opera, and we would sit at night and watch Cantonese sword fighting movies, and I would eat with her. I was just a little boy of 4 years old, and when we first came to Hong Kong, and so this was another maternal figure in my life, and I feel very positively influenced by having two great maternal figures in my life. So in Hong Kong, a nanny or a domestic helper then was called an ama, and my ama was called Ah Mei. That was her name. So this poem is dedicated to Ah Mei. Ama, nanny, auntie, sister, servant, a simple woman in black and white, not young, no threat, a mouthful of gold, a gilt-edged hedge against famine, war, and pestilence. Poor and illiterate, ideal for scrubbing, but entrusted with a stranger's child, a necessity or a convenience for those too busy, too ill, too worldly, trusting eternal motherly love of any woman for any child, leaving her own family deprived of appropriate maternal attention. Myths of hungry ghosts, one-armed swordsman, culinary treats, and Chinese opera. We absorb, acquire, adopt an alien culture and another mother tongue. These bonds can never be broken. Love is thicker than blood. Ame, ama, mama. 50 years on, the shadow of your presence remains as the wax from the candle I light for you rolls down like tears.
Lovely. Okay. I don't think I have a corresponding one here.
This is great. This is our own private poetry reading.
Yes, yes. We have no audience today, but this is
the
beauty
birds.
of it.
The birds appreciate our poem.
Exactly.
And we theirs.
Well, perhaps. Okay, David's poem was about a woman, of course, and my poem is going to be about a woman. This is entitled Abraham's Wife, and it's part of this section called Alternative Histories in my book Savage Charm. In it, I actually imagine what would Abraham's wife have said when she knew that Abraham intends to slaughter his son, his child. Of course, the son is Isaac in the Bible, or or son of Sarah, but in the Quran it is the son of Hajar, the Egyptian, the second wife, and his name is Ismail. Whatever the name is, whatever the woman is, that's not the point of the poem, but the poem is about what did Abraham's wife say. Okay, and then of course once the speaker says what she wants to say about slaughtering of the son, then the historian who wrote this comments on what she did. So Abraham's wife, what? Slaughter my son? To hell with you and your God. For what good have you both concocted this bloody deal? For testing your blind loyalty, your obedience, your faith, your fear, your ridiculous sense of duty? And where am I in this divine plot? Am I supposed to stay silent and just watch the Superman order the old man murder the young man in this man-to-man grand plan? Well, I don't care about your mad dream, incantations, big picture, cosmic scheme. I don't care about your revelations or miracles or what you said, he said. Lay a finger on my son and you're dead. And it came to pass that God saved the promising young man with a ram. No, he saved his mighty prophet from this inhuman business, this betrayal of the self. No, he saved himself. Abraham's wife smiled in relief. She never mentioned her role in this. She chose to keep up appearances. Thank you.
Excellent. We have hikers walking past us. They're getting a treat. They didn't know they were walking in such a cultural milieu.
Yeah. You want to have a drink of water? Not yet, huh?
Not yet. I'm good, I think.
Oh God, I get so dry so easily.
Yes, it's easy, I have to admit. At the moment I'm all right, but...
Okay. When are you going to read this?
Right, another Hong Kong poem. This one is called Armour Rock. Behind this range of hills is the satellite town of, or now it's a city of Sha Tin. And when I was a little boy, that was a fishing village. And there is on one of the hills overlooking the bay that runs into Sha Tin, which is now almost completely developed into housing. It's been reclaimed and you wouldn't be able to see anymore, but there's a rock formation which in English it's called Armour Rock. It looks like a woman with a baby on her back, as the Chinese would traditionally carry their baby on their back. And there's a lovely mythology of that, is that the husband went to sea as a fisherman and never returned. And so the wife stood on top of this hill, almost a mountain, waiting for her beloved husband to return with the baby on the back, and the husband never returned. And the myth is that Tin Hao, the goddess of the sea, and the goddess of mercy, took pity on the woman and turned her and the infant into stone so that they could ascend to heaven and join the husband who had perished at sea. So in Cantonese it's called Mong Fu Sek, which has much better connotations of loyalty than the English name. Armour Rock sounds like a foolish, uneducated woman who didn't know any better, but in Cantonese, Waiting for Husband Rock shows a lot of fidelity and loyalty and great strength of character. So it's a very revered piece of the landscape. If you can see it coming out of the Lion Rock Tunnel, if you go down that highway, look to your right, up to the right, you'll see Armour Rock. Armour Rock, Mong Fushek. For countless festivals and tides, I've watched and waited for my husband's return. Now, as I gaze down the valley, a change has come over our land. The village and shoreline gone in an evil upheaval, water turned to land. Dark forms rise up as far as the eye can see, like great ships planted in the earth, draped in covers like nets. The light of the black sky inhabits these nets, lit as for night fishing by a mighty demon trawling for souls. Perhaps by stealing the giant sea serpent's pearls, we've broken our pact with the sea. Gracious goddess Tin Hao, who turned me and your son to stone for love and loyalty, she has forsaken us. Noise, smoke, and burning rains blow here as barbarians race the sacred dragons on the remains of the harbour. I stand witness to the changes and pray that you, my love, may ever have full nets and a gentle wind and never return to this place.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I should have mentioned that they had historically in recent years had dragon boat races now along their international dragon boat races where the foreigners come and race dragon boats, which again was one of the spiritual traditions of the fisher folk.
It's a beautiful poem. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to read I, where I actually play on the word I, E-Y-E, but also the capital letter I, as in I hate you, for example. So I and I. Whenever I mention I, it is just E-Y-I, but if it is the capital letter I, I'm going to do this.
Okay.
To make some, differentiation between the two, because it's crucial here.
Yes.
Okay. I. Was it an illusion, or did I see that tear welling up in your eye? Confusing notion. In the middle of my delicious perversion, attentive penetration, you cry? Oh, but I, if only you could see the story of the eye from where I try to look and fail to see, fail to cry. In the beginning was the Word. The Word became flesh, and the eye was born. The eye was born. The flesh immediately torn. The eye explores, investigates, burns, devours. Love, it admits, but it also splits eye. Replace the eye with the ear, and you will hear the word of the beginning. It takes a long time for her, you or me, to understand, to see that the eye, maybe, wasn't made to look, oh, but made to cry. Thank you.
Bravo.
A little bit philosophical, but nice. A little bit academic, but nice. Yeah, let's have a drink of water. We just have water here today. No wine, no beer, none of that. Just water. And it's lovely. Okay. Waiting for David's next poem.
This is nice because we can give a little bit of an explanation before.
Yes.
And that makes it feel as if it's a nice poetry reading with a bit of an audience, and you can establish a rapport. This one is called Empirical Truth, and by way of an explanation, the many people think that the British colonies were populated by administrators from Britain, and these jolly good chaps would come out and civilize the natives and all this kind of notion. But the truth is, most of the people who came out to the colonies were working class stiffs, like my dear old dad, who was a shipbuilder from Greenock in Scotland. And so people came out here, and my parents certainly came out here to give a better life for their family, a better education to me and my siblings. And that was really the bulk of British people who came to work in the colonies, whether that be in British India or Hong Kong being one of the last colonies, and Malaysia, Singapore, areas throughout the world were colonized by the Brits. But there were administrators from Oxford and Cambridge, but most of the people were just working class people. So they always said with a tongue in cheek that Hong Kong was a first class place for second class people, and I'm proud to be a second class person. Empirical truth. Average women from all over Britain followed their husbands abroad. Unremarkable common or garden housewives from council estates with communal toilets, food, fuel and opportunities limited. Shipped out from Portsmouth by the pound, boarding with a clean sheet, the metamorphosis began. A tacit re-education from ladies with a tour or two of the colonies under their belts, colluding, propagating and rewriting their history. It's a long way by steamship from the steam laundry to gin and gin rummy, each day another coating of the thin veneer of culture and constitution for the roll ahead. Weeks later, bewildered husbands met reconfigured, unrecognizable wives with a new accent, new demeanor, the past. Upward mobility is easy when any way is up and only natives below. Natives with 3,000 years of culture traveling in the opposite direction to resettlement estates with communal toilets, food, fuel and opportunities limited as wind, water and fate reshuffle the cards.
Fantastic. And I think I have a corresponding one here.
This is like playing table tennis.
Yes, it is. I've got one here about colonialism and the deformities of colonialism. But it's also about the city and also about personal experience in some extent. I'm not going to explain much because I think it's quite direct. My writing is actually devoid of any literary agility. So it's quite direct here. A fulfilled promise. Absolutely diabolical in her savage charm, the city smiled and seemed to promise him reinvention. He was afraid to fail, so he failed to fall in her arms and decidedly determined to be undetermined, feeling fellows following firm and crystal convictions come of colonial deformities, malformed entities. Knowingly recognizing the stiff, fragile foundation upon which awkwardly penetrated ancient nations try to come to terms with the flimsy new identities born of fear and fire and frowned upon fornication. But the image of happy loved birds burnt his heavy heart and fed on the flimsy film of the framed sulking spirit, the odd timidity within the fragmented body that failed and yet filled those pages with crafty, sullen art. And thus the city somehow fulfilled her age-old promise. The fairy fiend of love frightened his non-flying wings, cut and kept always checked, shackled within tired yet raised arms. The fire of desire ferociously filled his psalms, the sign of full-fledged failure, the devil-stabbing kiss, and finally They laid him half dead upon his deathbed, with a sea of fiery words jumbling his big white head. The city winked at her mess, mocking his eternal loss. Thank you.
Bravo.
Very good. David's turn now. I am getting notifications. We don't want notifications now.
There's notifications that there's too much poetry going on here. The phone complained about the degree of alliteration in your last poem there.
Yeah, this is an alliteration poem to a great extent. German poetry, ancient German poetry, which was just, poetry was alliteration to the German tradition.
Okay, this one's fairly self-evident what it's about. Coming back to Hong Kong after the death of my father, which was preceded by the death of my mother, so I was coming home feeling a bit like an orphan. Homecoming. Flying home from the land of my birth, rituals performed, eulogy delivered. Orphaned and pensive, a little Chinese boy sleeps with his head on my knee, trusting and innocent. I slide my pillow under him and spread a blanket as his mother snores beside him. Later we chat. Uncle, are you a foreigner? Yes, born in Scotland. Why can you speak Cantonese? I'm a Hong Kong man now. How old are you? 55. And you? I am 5 years old. Just a year older than me when I left, travelling towards a new life. 50 years absence has made me a venerable uncle with an inscrutable Western smile, heading back to my Chinese home.
Bravo. All right, let's see what else here. Okay, that's a light one. It's about flowers and it's pretty direct. Flowers don't understand. They don't compromise. They either inhale all the breezes of spring or die. Integrity is their stand. The lover's prize makes him pale. The kiss is itself a sting, a goodbye. In their beauty and tenderness lies their very mercilessness. Vase fillers, soft killers, they never transgress any boundaries. They stay still until lovers fail to guess the time of disappearance and eternal loss. Flowers just don't understand what they do offhand. Thank you. Oh. This is such a great day.
It's a lot of fun. Right, I shall reply to your flowers poem with another flowers poem.
Great.
Which my father was a great gardener. He had green fingers, and towards the end of his life he became blind. But that didn't keep him out of his garden. He would go out and put some sticks in the ground and run a piece of string the length of one stick to another, and he would use that as a guide for planting his flowers and sometimes vegetables in the garden. So this was in Scotland. Anyway, when I went back there when my father was in his final weeks, this is a poem about his garden. Dying flowers for my father. Arriving from the plain to an empty home, I noticed the garden untended, forlorn. In the back, dandelions and flowers, both brown and dying, from weed killer indiscreetly strewn by fingers less green than yours. Last year I fixed the fence, cobbled together with scraps of wood and 2-inch nails. It might last a year. That's long enough, you said. The year before she died, I drove you both over high roads and by roads, old haunts, walked years ago, hand in hand. In the back seat you, by then lame and blind, opened the window, sniffed at the memories and gulped cold polo mint air. Hand in hand, you chatted like children on a day trips from school. Later, I bathed you as you did me in infancy, a filial debt finally repaid. Alone, your care in others' hands, I, now an outsider, trimmed your moustache, held your hand, and listened as you joked and sang some favourite songs. The day you died, the wind-damaged fence lost a board, and your flowers gave up the fight.
Lovely. This is unbelievable. We didn't even plan this at all. Okay. Oh yes. This one is entitled Poe, Baltimore, on the 3rd of October 1849, and it is actually, it imagines, this is also alternative histories, it imagines Edgar Allan Poe walking the streets at the end of his life, completely mad, as you know, history says, and it imagines that Poe actually wrote this last piece of his, playing on the famous Nevermore. It's supposed to be read, there's no punctuation here, it's supposed to be read in one breath. Of course I'm not going to do this because I can't, but I will try to be as quick as can be. This city of aliens, concealing the solitude of everyone living in it, walking the streets, feeling the coldness of being, in a festive gregarious crowd, looking at itself without seeing, its gloomy face and the narrow space given to those unwilling to pace with maintaining the facade or playing the masquerade, now looks at me in my borrowed attire, covering the borrowed body, containing the alien soul, unhearing the rapping of the beak in my heart, eager to put me to sleep forever. Unaware that I myself decided to exit its theatre and leave behind my art, to those speculating about the lonely poet hallucinating in the streets of Baltimore. But alas, this rhyme will be read nevermore. Thank you. Oops. All right.
Okay, well, I think in response to that poem that you've written about a great poet, I should read you a poem that I wrote about another great poet.
Is it Seamus Heaney?
It is Seamus Heaney, indeed.
Yes.
When I was previously a director of the Hong Kong International Literary Festival, we were very lucky to get Seamus Heaney as our guest here, and first time we'd had a Nobel laureate, and indeed the last time. And so Seamus Heaney came here and was very generous in his spirit. He was very inclusive, and many of our local fellow poets, we got to read with him on stage at the children's or students' readings, and we had a lot of interaction with him. He came to a poetry reading which I was hosting, which was unexpected, and I ended up reading The Railway Children, which was one of Heaney's well-known poems. So I got to read Heaney to Heaney, which was quite an experience. Anyway, when he departed, I was very inspired by his visit, by his poetry, and so I wrote a poem about him. This is called Digging Heaney, and you may recognize a few references to his poem Digging. Digging Heaney. Between my finger and my thumb, the camera rests, poised for posterity. Up on the stage, the saintly silver halo pauses, priest-like, behind the rostrum. Then rips a poem off the page and slaps it into life like a recalcitrant baby at birthing. 300 fertile minds finally hear the verse that all had read a dozen times. By God, the great man can handle a stanza. Deliver a poem like you'd drive a stolen car. Riding on waves of adolescent adulation, he paints with words agrarian landscapes and homely hearths. A worldview condensed in one loamy sod. The master of work passing on, preserving an ancient oral tradition. Between my finger and my thumb, the camera rests. Seamus, smile.
Lovely. Did he ever read this poem?
He did. Well,
he did, right?
I sent it to him, yes. I sent it to him. Sadly, he passed away not too long afterwards.
Mm. Very good.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
I don't know why we're doing this, but we're doing
Well,
it.
it's working. It's
It is working.
Yeah, it's off the cuff and a bit of fun. Call and response. We've actually been able to pair quite a few poems so far.
Now, I think we cannot pair this one.
Okay.
It was very difficult to actually convince the publisher that it should be part of my collection. I love the poem, and it's quite direct too. I am not going to say anything about its background. I'm not going to explain anything. I think it's pretty clear. Everybody would know what I'm talking about. The poem is entitled Burying Ishmael, and it imagines a group of people standing above the grave of someone. We do not know who these people are. We do not know whether they feel guilty about doing anything or not. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Let's sincerely pray and pour the libations carefully on the grave of Ishmael, the last one from the perished nations. We never really understood him, but we do wish him well and hope that he finally made it to his imagined lush garden of all possible gratifications. After living all of his miserable life in self-imposed shackles within shreds, and white sheets within shanties and sheds, chained, shot, shredded and charred in those crammed concentration camps, reducing that excess of flesh to the mush he deplored, cheered and cherished at once, clean and filthy at once, humble and arrogant at once, a unique pacifist, warmonger, symbol of gluttony and hunger, at once, dashing, smashing religious fascist, who was as sinful and guilty as any of us, but alas, not smart or shrewd enough to push himself to fathom that he lived in denial and never had the brains for one instant to admit without prejudice he was a full bucket of bullshit. Poor Ishmael, the proud sheep shearer, who was always already sheared by his preachers, those who shaped his past, present and future, died drowning in his own thick blood, with the same ideas in his head like a mesh, thriving with the maggots of his own ideal shit, yet smiling quite broadly, assured of his prospect, fortified by what he thought was carte blanche to Eden, to women, to the divine free lunch. Poor Ishmael and his endless incantations, which blurred his eyes and his mind at once, to the fact he was a nuisance we had to hush. I think I should read that again, because
I think so, because it was spoiled by these people walking past.
right. After you, maybe.
Okay, yeah, you probably need a rest.
This one is half.
I'm accepting the challenge of responding to your religious poem, or perhaps a poem against religious dogmatism and other issues. In school in Hong Kong, there were about 9 different religions represented just in my class. So growing up and going to people's houses for birthday parties, we became used to the fact that people had a different religious and spiritual tradition from ourselves and from others. So it came to a realization that perhaps nobody really had a monopoly on spirituality and truth. And I recall when I was a bit younger, people coming around our house knocking on the door and trying to give their own message of spiritual reality as they saw it. So that's inspired this poem, really, and I always considered it to be about cultural and religious imperialism. Missionary position. I was met by 2 guys in the street with perfect bright white teeth. They wore bright white shirts and neckties in spite of the heat. Elder Smith and Elder Young declared the black plastic tags on their breasts. I was the elder of both added together, so young and so sure of their mission, travelling in pairs to ward off Satan and the temptation of a cup of tea. They asked if I'd heard the one true word. I've heard many a true word, some spoken in jest. They're collecting souls, so where do I sign? And when can I collect my wives and my new teeth? Their God was a white American in a white shirt. They were right and everybody else was wrong. At the end of their mission, they'll be taking their souls and going back home to help make America great again. Now that put the fear of God in me.
And it should.
Okay, so let's have another crack at your Ishmael poem. I'm sure you heard that poem before. I think that one's quite an old one. I think I read it out loud.
Yeah. Some of the others too, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure. There's not much new work here, I'm afraid.
Yes. Okay, somebody's passing.
Hello, Neho.
Oh, Burying Ishmael. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Let's sincerely pray and pour the libations carefully on the grave of Ishmael, the last one from the perished nations. We never really understood him, but we do wish him well and hope that he finally made it to his imagined lush garden of all possible gratifications. After living all of his miserable life in self-imposed shackles within shreds, and white sheets within shanties and sheds, chained, shot, shredded and charred in those cramped concentration camps, reducing that excessive flesh to the mush he deplored, cheered and cherished at once, clean and filthy at once, humble and arrogant at once, a unique pacifist warmonger, symbol of gluttony and hunger at once, dashing, smashing religious fascist, who was as sinful and guilty as any of us, but alas, not smart or shrewd enough to push himself to fathom that he lived in denial and never had the brains for one instance to admit, without prejudice, he was a full bucket of bullshit. Poor Ishmael, the proud sheep shearer who was always already sheared by his preachers, those who shaped his past, present, and future, died drowning in his own thick blood, with the same ideas in his head like a mesh, thriving with the maggots of his own ideal shit, yet smiling quite broadly, assured of his prospect, fortified by what he thought was carte blanche to Eden, to women, to the divine free lunch. Poor Ishmael and his endless incantations, which blurred his eyes and his mind at once, to the fact he was a nuisance, we had to hush.
Thank you. Just check from here whether that might be... No, it's about the same. I thought because the sun's coming this direction it might be better, but it's not much difference.
Yeah. You still have bones here?
I still have a few. I mean, how long do you want to go? We could be here till tomorrow if we're not careful. Perhaps let me find another Hong Kong one. Okay, I used to live in a Hakka fishing village. Hakka is an ethnic minority of fishing folk. They were sort of wandering sea gypsies who arrived in Hong Kong about 500 or 600 years ago, and therefore they were here after some other indigenous groups, and they got all the worst land. So you find them out in very remote areas of Hong Kong, very hilly areas where they were fishing and doing agriculture. And I lived in a village like this for 33 years, which was very enjoyable. And it was so far off the beaten track that Hong Kong people used to come and visit there, and they would have busfuls of elderly people out on a day trip who would come and visit, and there was not too many toilets there, so sometimes you'd have people knocking on your door asking if they could use the toilet. So anyway, this is and Cantonese ladies of a certain age are very nosy, inquisitive, and will ask any question. So this is a homage to those inquisitive aunties. Ambushed. An elderly man approached, asking about a toilet for his wife. Such a lovely old lady, how could I leave her in distress? Come, auntie, you're welcome to use my home. As I turned, 1 became 2, 2 became 5, and finally 9, all queued up and smiling, with me handing out soap and towels like a washroom attendant in a massage parlor. Then the questioning began. No one expects the Chinese Inquisition. Forget name, rank, and serial number. These are no mere amateurs. Cantonese aunties are better than the KGB at getting results. Name, age, place of birth, do I own or rent, how much per month, married, how many children. I could have stood a beating, but they were much too subtle for that, calling me by name and talking in turn. I managed to hang on to my 1 testicle and annual salary, but only because their bus was leaving. But they know where I live, and they'll be back.
Very nice. I don't know what
That's a true story.
That's a true story.
Yeah,
I can tell. Right.
Stand here because it's nice to get the mountain just behind your shoulder. It's a lovely thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll move and get it on the other shoulder, just for a bit of variety.
Yeah. All right. This one is called "The Goddess of Chaos Talks to Equus," and it is. This is influenced by Equus, actually. I think it's an 80s film done by Richard Burton, and also influenced actually by Lars von Trier and his films, especially Melancholia. So, the Goddess of Chaos talks to Equus. You should mind my new status, Equus. I am now a married woman. You shouldn't stare at me like that with those big eyes of yours. You shouldn't be excited when you see me. This is totally embarrassing. You cannot expect any one of them to understand. They are natural born liars, and they know it, even though they tell themselves day and night that they know not what they do. Equus, we have no choice but to go our separate ways. You on 4, and I, unfortunately, on 2. But I will never forget you. Thank you. All right. When you want to call it a day, just tell me, because I can go on.
Okay. Let me see, what have I got here?
The sun is there. It's a beautiful scene from Kowloon Peak. Not very well known as the peak, actually, on the other side. Not known for tourists, as David said. This is my first time here, but I think it's his 100th time here, and he knows his way around.
Okay, this is one which is not to do with Hong Kong. It's one I wrote really in the aftermath of President Barack Obama, his success as being voted American president. Regime change, November 2008. In the wreck of the golden age, a generation waits for God and votes and hopes for another brand new deal. The world holds its breath, turning blue as Joe Public ticks the box. Sorry, let me start again.
It's okay.
Fuck that up. Haven't read this for a long time. Okay. Regime change, November 2008. In the wreck of the golden age, a generation waits for God and votes and hopes for another brand new deal. The world holds its breath, turning blue as Joe Public ticks the box, a choice affecting us all. Neocon, or simply Neo, the one. A black man in the White House, a precedent for president, the new Messiah, or the Antichrist, perhaps just another pinball wizard, finger on the button, such a supple wrist. We all hope
That's okay. Let's have a sip of water.
Nearly finished it.
Usually the simple ones are the ones that...
Yeah. I had actually got to the last line as well. Regime change, November 2008. In the wreck of the golden age, a generation waits for God and votes and hopes for another brand new deal. The world holds its breath, turning blue as Joe Public ticks the box, a choice affecting us all. Neocon, or simply Neo, the one. A black man in the White House, a precedent for president. The new Messiah, or the Antichrist. Perhaps just another pinball wizard, finger on the button, such a supple wrist. We all hope a cog has turned, the wake-up call for the American dream. We all have a dream, free at last, free at last.
Beautiful. Great.
I'm pretty much done, I think.
Yeah, me
Ahmed,
too, actually. I read the readable ones. There are ones that okay. Oh, yeah.
It's
All right.
been a damn good reading, this, I have to say.
Okay, this one is entitled "The Selfie," and it talks about the selfie. Actually, it's something that we're doing daily now, and we took a few selfies today, actually, David. Anyway, the selfie. I saw me clicking me the moment of clicking. Me was looking at me. I don't know who clicked who. It was like touching my own lone genitalia. I felt the ecstasy of me knocking me out.
Wait for me to go. Hello. Thai. I think they're from Thailand or something, or yeah, Vietnam or something. It's definitely a kind of Khmer language. Right?
I came to Hong Kong, I couldn't distinguish between.
Yeah, they're not like Japanese at all. Okay.
Now I can.
Right, now they've all gone. We can start again. We keep being interrupted here by birds, wild boar, and people,
Hikers.
walking past us. They don't know the value of culture, these people. Come on.
Yes, or they do, but
Or
they don't care.
Yeah, they can't monetize it, so they've gone about their business.
Oh, somebody's coming again?
Yeah.
This one.
Wait for this other gentleman to go past.
Yeah. He seems quite calm.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
Hello,
there.
Hello.
All right, let's go. The selfie. I saw me clicking me the moment of clicking. Me was looking at me. I don't know who clicked who. It was like touching my own lone genitalia. I felt the ecstasy of me knocking me out, smiling at me, clicking me, smiling back at me at the very moment. Yet looking back at me filled my heart with sadness and odd melancholy. And I couldn't show me comfortably freely. How could I possibly bear me at this moment made of self-made and self-inflicted sodomy? So I invited my friends in to fill the frame, and they stood beside me, smiling at me, clicking me, smiling back at me. Finally, I can show me unashamedly, or even tease me and display me on a shelf, for they're witnesses who actually saw me doing it to myself. Thank you.
Well, I think I probably exhausted all the,
Yeah,
as you say, readable parts.
the readable ones.
We had some lovely ones here.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we have.
In a
That was a
splendid
great day.
setting.
Yes. Very nice. That was the great poet David McKirdy
in tandem with the great poet Ahmed.
I was trying to say with a greater poet here.
Yeah, exactly. You're the one holding the selfie stick, so you have control over what's being said and editorial content.
Everybody knows this is untrue. So Richard, this is a great poet here. We had a great day together. Beautiful reading, David. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for
contributing
doing
to VYP.
Yes.
And yeah, you want to say anything?
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a great pleasure to read with you after we worked out at least 20 years or so, nearly 20 years when we last read together. So it's a great pleasure to resurrect that again.
Yes. Great. Thank you, dear. Bye-bye.